Thank you, Chairman Mica and Ranking Member Rahal, for the opportunity to testify today. No doubt we will be hearing from each proponent that high-speed rail means jobs, thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs, even hundreds of thousands of jobs. The reality is that these jobs claims are part of a fantasy. The more you investigate California high-speed rail, the greater you will be convinced that California's bullet train is a boondoggle. It is ironic that the most strident high-speed rail advocates, people claiming to care about the San Joaquin Valley, are the very people who refuse to resolve our water crisis, as Mr. Rahal referred to earlier, refuse to help us in our dying timber and mining industries that continue to shed jobs, and support more rules and regulations that drive business out of the Valley and California every day. Today I would like to make 3 points. It's clear that high-speed rail is not about jobs. It's about political corruption, public deception, and bureaucratic experimentation. First, let's discuss political corruption. Dan Walters, a columnist for the Sacramento Bee, was one of many to observe that the initial phase of California's high-speed rail, the segment between Merced and Bakersfield, was based on politics, not planning. This conclusion is justified based on several factors, not the least of which was the election eve announcement of a $700 million stimulus grant, which was the subject to certain conditions. Among those conditions was a requirement that high-speed rail construction begin in rural Central California congressional district of an incumbent who was facing re-election. Thanks to this stimulus grant, the Golden State's high-speed rail project has become nationally recognized as the train to nowhere. And since few objective observers believe it will never be completed, the probability is high that this slogan will become a reality. Consider these basic facts. High-speed rail was originally projected to be $15 billion in 1996. Today it's $118 billion. My estimation is it will be closer to $200 billion than $100 billion. In 15 years, they've spent $800 million. Not a single inch of track has been laid. California is broke. The state is in a perpetual budget crisis, and the outlook is red ink as far as we can see. The second point I want to make is about public deception. Mr. Chairman, high-speed rail's popularity has diminished, and as stated earlier, 2/3 of Californians want this referendum back on the ballot to re-vote. Since 2007, no fewer than 20 PR firms have been hired and have spent multi-million dollars on TV, radio, and print campaign to convince Californians to support high-speed rail. Moreover, the High-Speed Rail Authority has bankrolled a vast array of political consultants to curry favor with elected officials. If high-speed rail were widely supported, a multi-million-dollar PR campaign would not be necessary. Californians are growing weary of the promises made by rail advocates, the elusive green jobs, the supposed clean air, the shorter commutes, all part of the fantasy. You don't have to take my word for it, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to submit these reports here from the State Auditor, the legislative analysts who have questioned the assumptions to sell this project.
Without objection, they'll be made part of the record.
The third and final point is taxpayer-funded bureaucratic experimentation. $800 million have been spent on studies, public relations, and staff salaries. Here's an important point. The chief of this rail authority makes $375,000 a year. By way of comparison, the president and CEO of Amtrak, who has the responsibility for our entire country's passenger rail system, rail that actually exists today, is paid $350,000. Despite the $800 million in 15 years studying the project, they came up with an average rider fare, put this up here, of $162 for a round trip. Now, I spent $0, got on the internet, and within 3 clicks found to ride the Acela train, our fastest train in the country, the Northeast Corridor, it costs $350. It stretches credibility to the breaking point to suggest that California will achieve greater efficiency and lower costs than that of the Northeast system, which connects Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. This is the busiest rail line in the country. I did a couple more clicks on the internet. Remember, $800 million versus my study that cost $0. They promote that they're going to get 29 to 43 million passengers on this train. Last year, the Acela train, 10.3 million passengers. We are being led to believe that the fantasy train will carry more than twice as many riders at half the cost of the existing system here in the Northeast. Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, it has become clear that the entire California high-speed rail experiment is a case study in how not to run a government program. And with that, I yield back.